This is the Master Marketer Show, powered by Proofpoint Marketing. Each week, we explore the mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets the top B2B marketers use to drive results. Gain actionable insights, one masterful, revenue-generating success story at a time. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of the Master Marketer Show. Today, I've got an awesome conversation lined up for you all with Adam Shaw, who is the head of demand generation at WeSpire. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart. I grew up in paid media, and we're going to talk about paid media on a budget, which is actually even more near and dear to my heart because that's how I got started, is small budgets and how do you make the most of them. So we're going to dive into that today. And as the show is titled, we start with mindsets. So what's a mindset someone needs to have to work with a small budget when it comes to paid media?
Yeah, you have to be a tinkerer. And I use that term a lot because we have a lot of tinkerers on my demand gen team. For instance, one of our guys who pretty much runs our paid search. He never did paid search for like 3 or 4 months ago, and he's an absolute, killer at it now. And it's because there's always something there's always some little piece that he picks out and says, okay, these keywords need to be separated out, right? We need to make these 3 keywords their own campaign. We need to make these 5 keywords their own campaign. We need a new landing page to adjust just those keywords a little bit. And really, it's all about being a tinkerer because, if you have a ton of budget and like your cost per meeting or whatever, if that's what you're looking for in a paid search, could like $1,000, but you got $1 million, great. Maybe you can get another 100K and they're suddenly, okay, great, another 100 meetings. Well, guess what? Your budget might be 20K a month and that's it. There's nothing that you can possibly do in the world to get more. And, you got to bring that $1,000 down to $750, down to $500. And you can't hide behind more zeros at the end of the budget. So that's something that you really need to be, is just tinker, and nothing's quite ever good enough.
Oh man, there's a couple of threads I want to pull on there. The first one is, let's just define, I'm curious, and what's your definition of tinker? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a nebulous term. It's kind of like a note and you see it kind of thing. But if you're going to take it actually on like a personal level, like if you were to know somebody or work with somebody and you see their little Slack thing on, it's green, it's 10:30 at night, and you go, what are you doing? And somebody says, oh, I thought about a set of the keywords that we're using aren't converting incredibly well, but there's a high traffic for them. So I figured we need a new landing page and I'm making one. That's a tinkerer, right? They found a spot where they might be able to get another couple of extra signups out of there. It's just something where it's like, you may not necessarily know what's wrong in the moment, or maybe there's nothing specifically wrong. It's just you are going to find somewhere to get better. So there's not really a hard like, hey, this is what being a tinkerer is, but you can just, it's kind of, it when you see it type of thing.
Does it mean something different in the performance marketing or paid media space versus elsewhere, you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're a tinkerer in like a content creation space, right, you are looking for better words that can get your message across like in a smaller space, like a little bit tighter. What you're going to do in a performance media space is going to be so much more like obvious feedback, right? It's, I did this thing and it got 3% better. And it's just 1-to-1. It's very objective. When you are a content creator, it's super subjective. It's okay, I got this 15 word paragraph or whatever down to 10 words. But is it better? I don't know. Let's go ask some people, and we'll just kind of see what people think about how that message turned into. So it's definitely going to be a little bit different. Not everybody has a creative mind. Not everybody has a analytical mind. So I think that's definitely going to be something that's going to specific for people. Like for me, completely analytical. I have very little creative ability, except for the learned ability, I guess, that you kind of get forced to on a small team. But I can go and I can say, hey, our goal next month is to decrease our cost per meeting by 5%. What are we going to do for it? Let's try this. Did that work? Yes. No. All right. Let's try something else, or let's keep doing it.
It's interesting if you bring that up, and I'm going to take us on a bit of a tangent, as I sometimes do. Mm-hmm. you talk about, kind of analytical versus creative. Do you think that they are kind of an either or do you see that there's an overlap?
No, I mean, I think people have different skill sets. I've known quite a lot of people who actually paid search people and SEO people are really, really good examples of this, that have a little bit of both, right? Because they do have to be incredibly like succinct in their copywriting. They don't have a lot of characters to work with to get a really good point, a valuable point across. But there's also clear data on the other end that says, hey, I've been doing all of this somewhat subjective work for the past month, and my ranking went up, and the traffic went up, and the qualified meetings went up from this piece of content. And what happens for me if I'm looking at that and I'm dealing with a technical side, or I'm just looking and say, okay, how many qualified meetings do I get? I might go to somebody who's a really good writer and say, hey, I know what needs to be done here to make this better. I just can't see that. I just can't see the creative piece of it. But there's some people who can do both, and those are the people who make a boatload of money doing SEO.
It's interesting that the one place my mind kind of goes to is, most people think of creative as copywriting, design, etc. But I feel like there's a miss or a gap maybe in sort of what I'll call like creative analytical thinking, right? In terms of there might not be an easy, straightforward way to attribute something, but there is still a way to measure its impact, or how, what kind of creatively figuring out, okay, which correlations should I try to dig for? Where can I find the data that might prove my hypothesis right or wrong? Like those things are, at least to me, in my mind, are creative, right? But they're creative in the analytical sense.
Yeah, I think that I can kind of like pinpoint it's like why I think this happens, where to understand kind of more. I think what I understand what you're saying is to say like some people like maybe don't have that ability to do both, if that makes sense, and like there's a way to break it apart. I think so exactly opposite of your background. I came from huge budgets. My first year in media buying, I spent $150 million. Okay, and it was in political election in 2016, and it was crazy. Then after that, I went to very similar kind of things, and then now I'm spending significantly less. I like it more, but I'm spending a lot less. And what happens is you get kind of like typecast in these huge agencies that have creatives. Well, they have a creative who's the actual content creator. Then they have the content strategist, whatever that means. So it usually means there's some sort of like, oh, I'm looking at the analytics of this, and then I'm going to tell the content creator what to do. Well, those people who are content creators, oftentimes, especially in these huge agencies where the content strategists and account managers like don't care about anything except for getting that out. Nobody communicates to them why they're doing it, right? So they don't ever get to learn. So that's why I love small teams and small agencies now, and smaller like companies, is that person is probably going to be the same person, account manager type of person, whether like if you're internal, then you're kind of like maybe overseeing multiple things, account manager being that, then the content strategist being the person who's kind of tying it all together from a subjective and objective standpoint, and then the actual content creator. Sometimes that's all one person, and if you can do that earlier in your career, like you're going to be that person who's going to be able to pull it all together. The toughest part is telling the story to people who don't understand either of them, but that's a whole different kind of ballpark there.
Yeah, we could probably have a whole separate episode around the pitfalls of traditional large agency structures. Awesome, but kind of going back to the tinker side of things. Last question for you, I think there is. Do you think that, is it nature versus nurture kind of thing? Are you born being a tinker, or can you learn to be a tinker?
You definitely can learn to be a tinker, because I wasn't really, and I am now. A good example, basically all throughout college, I swam at University of Kentucky, and I never like really cared about the reason why I was doing things. I had a really good coach. He said, go do this. I did it, right? Like, I didn't care. There was no tinkering. Somebody else was doing it for me. Went into paid media, huge budgets, zero experience whatsoever. It was basically just throw cash at stuff. I didn't even care how the performance was, because nobody did. It was just like, all right, first of all, it's TV. So, I mean, there's not really that much tinkering you could do. And, I had to learn it. I'm not a detail-oriented person just by nature, if that makes sense. But I had to nurture myself into it. And I've seen a lot of people nurture themselves into it. It's the people who I've seen, mostly creatives, are able to do this or have to do it, right? Because these days creatives aren't being paid a lot of money, so they know that hey, I want to go into a more analytical side like SEO, and they basically, I tell them like, great, find something wrong with everything and just make that a habit, and you can turn yourself into a tinkerer.
And this is probably a good transition into skill sets, actually, I think, which is, what muscles does somebody need to train to become a tinkerer or be a better tinkerer?
Yeah, I can boil it down to
in
one
paid
thing.
media.
Yeah, no, paid media, SEO, whatever. I can boil it down to one thing, and that is being in charge of the data. So what it has to say is that you, at some point in your career, you need to be the one who's entering the numbers into Excel or Google Sheets, whatever. If you don't, you're never gonna like really understand like these little things. I shouldn't say never, because there are going to be like people who are just kind of able to get it, but being that person to just do the, for lack of a better word, grunt work. Like there's a reason people do grunt work, and there is a reason that the people who are really, really good at paid media and analytics in general said, I used to spend 10 hours on an Excel sheet, and it's because they take that and they're able to like just remember all these things years later, and that helps them strategically. So if there's one thing to just lock into, it's learn how to be an Excel absolute nutcase. I call people Excel nutcases. And learn a little bit of like SQL and like Python and stuff, just so you can kind of like force yourself into that mindset if you don't already have it. But yeah, to boil it down to one thing, I think that'd be it.
Interesting. I totally agree with the Excel thing for sure. I never learned SQL or Python myself, but I definitely what did you call them? Excel nutcases, right?
Nutcases,
I was definitely one of those.
Excel freaks, Excel nutcases, yeah.
Still amazes me how many people don't know how to do like basic things like pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and stuff. Kind of crazy. But is there any other skill sets in terms of, again, being successful at managing small budgets or smaller budgets?
Yeah, definitely. Make sure that you actually do every single part of it, even if you come in as like a senior like manager person. So I'll give you, for instance, when I started at WeSpire, in the past, I've always had a creative on my team. At WeSpire, I came in and we didn't have any creatives on our team. And I downloaded Canva because I needed some ads made. And I was the only person who really understood what the vision of the ad was that I wanted to do for LinkedIn. And and everybody else was incredibly busy doing the things that, we've really like honed them in on. And I got into Canva, and now I can generally get into Canva, right? Like, so make sure you understand how to do like literally everything on your team. You don't have to do everything on your team, but understand how it works. And if you don't, tell the person who's doing it to show you, or get the person who's doing it to show you, and tell them, hey, I'm going to do it for next week's cycle or whatever, monthly, weekly cycle that you're working on these things, because I really need to understand how to do this. That'll help you do two things. One, in times where you're working with small budgets, but there are times that you want to like really push things out a lot harder. It means that you have an extra hand in the grunt work. Again, for lack of a better phrase, the grunt work, the really like nitty gritty stuff. And two, you can sympathize with the people that you work with. If you don't understand what it takes to get the reporting done each week, and you have somebody else in your team doing all the reporting, and you tell them, hey, I know the reporting's due in 3 hours, but can you do this, and this first? And, depending on who the person is, right, you're their boss. They don't want to say no to you. Hopefully that you build a culture where they can say no to you, but if that's kind of missing and the person just doesn't feel comfortable doing that, you can really put them in a tough spot, right? And that's how you create burnout immediately, right? Like this person might have had amazing reporting about ready to come out, and you just sell them down everything else. And the one thing that they were really responsible for that day suddenly didn't turn out that good. So really make sure that you understand like the hands-on tactics that are going in every little thing that's happening. Doesn't mean do it, doesn't mean micromanage. It definitely doesn't mean micromanage, but you have to have an understanding so you can sympathize with your people and be able to help them when things need to be pushed out faster or harder.
Yeah, Nick, something you just brought up, I think might make maybe a little bit of sense to take even a slight step back here is there's the managing small budgets, but then there's also being a leader of a team that manages a small budget. Mm-hmm. From a mindset perspective, I think you kind of touched on it in terms of, owning the whole process. Is there anything else that maybe comes to mind in terms of, again, like pretty much what you're doing? Like what's a leadership mindset that you have that helps you in your situation?
Yeah, leadership mindset is to help the people on your team find what they really like and are really good at, and let that be the direction that you take. If I were to have come in on day one at any job, WeSpire, place I've been in the past, if I come in on day one and say, this is how we're going to do it, you're highly likely to fail, right? Unless for some reason you know everybody on the team already and you already have like that insight. You usually don't. You walk in and you have a tinker on your team and you have an incredible, for us, an incredible BDR on our team. So I came in and said, all right, paid search, it's probably going to be big for us. SEO is probably going to be big for us. And really, really good outbound relationships early in the sales process is going to be good for us. I'm going to pick up the slack everywhere else. I'm going to figure out how to use Canva, right? So like the big thing is let your people and the skill sets that are there guide the direction you go in. Especially if you have a small team, right? Like you're not an enterprise company with 100 people. Like you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to fire 4 people and bring in creative, right? And you don't want to do that anyway. And when you're in a small team, there's so many good, talented people, and everybody's extremely talented because you can't just skate by like if you worked at Microsoft or something, right? So I guess I'm kind of getting out of a tangent. Throw out that in a bow. Find what your people are really, really strong in, and let that guide your strategy.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that approach in terms of, because a lot of the time people will do the opposite, which is, hey, here's a strategy that I think we should go for, but doesn't match with the skill sets of your team. And actually, it makes me think about I posted a video on this not too long ago, with kind of more around playbooks, right? But the analogy I'd use there is like, in football, when a coach moves from one team to another, they have a set system that they're going to bring with them, but they're going to adapt that system to the personnel that they have. They're not going to go, hey, here's the 100 plays we ran over in San Francisco. I'm not going to Pittsburgh here. But I made that up. I have no idea if a coach recently went from that team to the other. But point being is like, you're very likely not going to take those same 100 plays. But like, all right, team, we did that here. We're going to do this here, just the same way. Like you have different personnel, different people. They have different skill sets. Like
I think like to even expand it further, you maximize those skill sets. You find out what needs to be added. So if you're thinking, okay, our paid search is really good and our LinkedIn's really good. We are making a lot of videos or something like that. And you say, okay, but the videos are taking a ton of time. It's like optimizing out the bottom 10% of your job, right? So now like for us, for instance, we like to create a lot of videos. I'm the guy who's editing all the videos. I'm not that great at it. It takes me a long time to get out like 10 videos. It takes me like 40 hours. Whereas I've got buddy in the space who we end up bringing on as a freelancer who can get 10 videos done in like 2 hours, right? And optimizing out those 10%, and then you can lean it as a strength. Then suddenly your bottom 10% is a strength. And you just keep doing that over and over again. And what that means in bringing people or third party or tools to do that, it's kind of just how you keep leaning on the strengths, what you have available to you right now.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of, again, kind of bringing it back to the topic in hand, I suppose, which is paid media. From a technical perspective, are there any specific skill sets you look for? Obviously, we talked about Excel and kind of the analytical piece. Is there anything else that come to mind?
I think if you're getting really into the tactics, it's understanding that buyer, like getting to figure out what the buyer journey is for your customers, right? That takes a lot of work. It takes just a lot of experience. That's something that you can just have. Like you need to know like where in the buyer journey people are at baseline. I work in an industry that has only been around really in the way that it is like for like 10 to 15 years, right? ESG and CSR, 10 to 15 years ago, nobody cared about sustainability. Not a lot of people care about sustainability. Not a lot of people cared about diversity and inclusion. Now we have companies that have 100 employees coming and saying, hey, I need a diversity and inclusion program. I need a sustainability program. I need a social impact program, and volunteering and giving program. For them, everybody's baseline in the buyer journey there, but most of the baseline buyer journey there is really low, right? There's a lot of people who are just learning that come to us and we get leads from people who type into search or in legit meetings and that are converting into deals and in revenue. What is diversity inclusion? What is an employee resource group? Click on our ad. Great. We can help you with the whole thing. Done. Now, if you're in a space that's like, or if you have a huge brand in a space, but if you have a space that's like IT, for instance, which I've done a lot of work in IT, demand gen, selling specifically like data center computers that hasn't been around for decades, right? There's not a lot of like baseline education that you do. Like, so you don't have to do a ton of educational content around it. You might just have to go right into that like product content or like review content. Sometimes like people call it, where you have like quotes of like, oh, like we're about to launch a campaign like this. So it's very like top of mind for us is like, here are some reviews from people who we worked with, some like really cool quote from the person and their name on the bottom. You can probably lean on that a little bit harder. But if you're in an industry that's not there, then you're going to want to lean on that educational content a little bit more. But really, like learning how to like find that inside of each of your ICPs is like it's critical for the role.
Do you expect on your team? Do you expect? Is that something that you kind of expect of yourself, and you're leading that charge, or do you expect the person running paid search to be able to do that?
I don't like using the word expect. I think that sounds really like I don't know, especially not the right word. I expect everybody to want to learn how to do that, right? For me right now, I think I'm probably the one who's leading that charge a little bit more, mostly because I'm the one who's doing the LinkedIn, whereas paid search is more of a demand capture than it is like a demand generation piece. The demand generation for us is happening on paid and organic social a lot, and some of our organic postings like that. So I wouldn't say I expect everybody on the team to understand that. I would say I would expect people to be excited to learn about it if they are somebody who wants to get into paid media on my team. I think to the extent our sales team and the business development team should understand it, because they have these conversations with these people who already converted, and there's already been some education. They've already been kind of like some level of introduction to what we're doing. They're just taking that to a whole other level. So
Makes sense. So let's maybe talk about, you just mentioned LinkedIn. Let's bring it down to tactics a little bit in terms of what does your setup look like? You're managing a small budget. I don't know if you want to share how large your budget is. Not totally up to you. But what does it look like, and what are you doing to maximize it?
yeah, so our LinkedIn budget's like really small, like it's under 10K, like decently under 10K. Our paid search is much higher because it's just performing a lot better right now. But for me, it looks like this: I have a top of funnel campaigns group, middle of funnel campaign group, bottom of funnel campaign group. Top of funnel is all video, all optimized towards video views, view throughs, basically view completions. I think they like 75% completions, I think, or 92%. I forget what they call it on LinkedIn. It's kind of like a really specific number. I think it's 92% or something like that. So those are all optimized towards that. That's really just an introduction. And then I have the middle of funnel campaign group is mostly retargeting, and a little bit of net new for our monthly live series that we do. It's called WeSpire Live, where an expert in the ESG, CSR, diversity inclusion space, whatever, comes on and talks with our CEO at both the thought leadership and tactical level. So that's basically getting the education at the top of funnel, in the middle of funnel, and on the bottom of funnel, we're starting to introduce these quote ads, some product ads. But if you can get the retargeting into a really good spot, that middle funnel and that bottom funnel, you don't have to spend a lot. Like we spend more on the top of funnel than we do in the middle and the bottom, because the retargeting is really tight. And it just takes a lot of trial and error, again, tinkering with it, which retargeting groups are actually doing the best. And if early on you have to have separate campaigns, because in LinkedIn you can't really tell which targeting is doing what within the campaign. If you have to like have individual campaigns for each targeting group or retargeting, group, then do that. I don't know if I would do that with a smaller budget, just because that can really eat things up. And LinkedIn, just like paid search, if you don't have enough money to find a lead, it's not going to find it. So, but that's how it looks like for us. Really, 3: top funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, and it's focused on top and middle is going to be all education. Bottom of funnel is going to be more conversion focused.
You mentioned video at the top funnel. What kind of video content are you creating?
A lot of it right now is straight to camera stuff with our CEO, and she's an incredible subject matter expert in the space, and it's decently tactical with a little bit of thought leadership. We're going to expand this a little bit more now that we have WeSpire Live moving. We're going to put some of that content out there as well. But I mean, all of our thought leadership content and educational content tells you exactly how to do what we're doing, right? The whole idea, especially for our product, is you can do everything our product does by yourself. It's just really hard, and it's really easy to do it with our product, right? So here's how to do it. this is the thought process you have to have. This is a strategy you have to have. If you go onto our LinkedIn, WeSpire's LinkedIn, look at our written content. It all is like, here's how to do this using Excel. Here's how to do this using SharePoint, Google Docs, whatever it might be. We don't think this is the best way to do it. If you have budget for it, come use our product is kind of like the idea, right? And now I forgot what the original question was, but I think I answered it maybe.
Yeah, you did. I was asking like, what types of video content are you putting out there?
Yep.
At the top of the funnel.
Yep. Tactically and strategically relevant content.
Got it. And then from a retargeting perspective, are you retargeting video viewers then? At that point?
Yeah, I retarget people who watch the video all the way through. That has worked decently well, at least for now. So I'd like to find a more highly engaged way to retarget, but LinkedIn is pretty limited in how you can retarget people. So, for now, it's really just video views that we try to target or get through. So we also have like call to actions on top of funnel, like not like really, really strong ones, but we do say like, hey, check out WeSpire Live if you want. Here's the link, right? So we do get conversions there as well. That's important to note that it doesn't mean that you can't get conversions off the top funnel stuff.
Gotcha. Have you, I'm curious, have you tested more of, again, what we call product marketing type content, so either testimonials or things like that at the top of the funnel?
Not top of funnel. Well, not on purpose anyway. I guess when I was working in more of the tech space and the IT space, everything, the company that we worked for at the agency I was at, they everything had to convert into meetings. Like they didn't believe in funnels. So I guess inadvertently, yes. Surprised it didn't do very well. I just don't think that. I think that's something that there really needs to be some level of consideration happening, especially in our space, right? There needs to be a way to explain that you have a problem. A lot of folks, I was talking to somebody in our industry the other day that basically said, our giving program's okay, right? And the reporting's not that great, but it's doing what it does. And I said, so you do you not realize that your reporting could be better? He goes, is there anything better? It's like, okay, boom. Like that's the exact person. It's like, we have to tell you have a problem, right? With the top of funnel stuff. And then we have to present that solution to you. If it's Amazon, then just hit them with, the testimonial or like the product ad, but it's not, right? This is a product needs high consideration. So I haven't seen in that situation, high consideration products work with bottom of funnel messaging, what I would consider at the top of funnel. I'm sure it works for some people, but not for me.
And we haven't tested this yet, but the hypothesis we're working with right now, we're going to try to test out with some clients is where pretty much it's changing what a testimonial and or a case study actually is. Because, the typical format is like exactly what you said. It's the only reason you might find it interesting is if you are already considering a solution or switch to another solution. But if you change it into a different format where it's more of a story that tells you about the problem and then tells you about the solution, right? From the customer's point of view. So it's that could be interesting where you're sort of doing 2 in 1 and you're with the same piece of content, you're potentially getting both what you describe as top funnel, bottom funnel. I don't know if it's going to work. I was just curious.
I don't see why it wouldn't work. I think the difficulty is going to be in the creative format in a way that doesn't make it look like really weird. People just want to scroll by. I think it depends on the product, right? Like if you're talking about a monthly SaaS subscription that's $29.99 or something like that, whatever it might be, right? Like I think that would work, right? Because I can go and I can say, all right, top of funnel, I have a quote from somebody that says, this is the cheapest way that I've ever increased my creative output. Only cost me $30 a month, right? That educated people that maybe you have a problem with your creative output and it only costs $30 a month and it's a testimonial. Like I think you hit all of it. But with a product that's like ours, like our average deal value is, 1,000 times that, right? It's pretty tough to be like, to tell our story in one sentence is going to be incredibly difficult. What might work, I guess, is probably the carousel ads, but I haven't really liked carousel ads on LinkedIn in the past year.
I've gone back and forth on it too. I got to be honest. Like they worked well, and recently they haven't been working as well from what we found. So it's something's changed in the market/algorithm on that one, which is interesting that you mentioned that.
My guess and like my inkling is that LinkedIn has done a really really good job at keeping ads looking decently organic, and they don't look anything like the organic carousel like posts because they're not really. I mean, I guess they are kind of carousel. They just don't look like it to me.
It's not the same
Yeah,
flipbook style that you get.
yeah, it's right. Yeah, I think it's yeah because you can on the ad you kind of like scroll it across, whereas it's a flip. Yeah, I think flipbook's a good word for it. Yeah, organically it's a flipbook.
Exactly. Yep. That's interesting. It could be that, and I didn't think about that, but that makes sense. But no, like what you're talking about, sort of for consider purchases, we're actually considering testing this. I mean, most of our clients, we're talking, 500K to $1 million plus, because it's service-based businesses like in the engineering space or biotech consulting or things like that. So I think not mine, but our hypothesis internally is that I think there's a way to create a story that hits on a very specific problem, and then sort of just briefly mention solution, but it's still sort of that connection between client, service provider, that kind of thing, and we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be interesting. Like, I'm just trying to think about how it works. So, my girlfriend is a PhD student at a local school here, and I say local school with Washington University, which is like not a local school so much, but it's like a huge place. But she's not like up the college. It's like a big school. So they have these like massive machines, right? And they were just talking about which ones they're going to buy. They did that they used to like synthesize protein, and I probably got that terminology wrong, right? But it's all about like the speed and the accuracy of it. So like that message would be so easy, like increase the speed and accuracy of your protein synthesis with this machine. Boom. And first of all, they don't care how much it costs. These machines cost $500,000, and it's all government subsidized. So that's not really the point of it. But like that's like, okay, yeah, it takes 3 days for me to do this protein like analytics and synthesizing, and I'd like it to take 1 day so I can get my PhD done 60% faster. So something like that would be very interesting for us. Like some of the quotes that we're trying to put out, or like stories that we're trying to put out in very succinct way, is like I think it was like optimize your reporting in sustainability modules, in 3 months. And people right now in our space love that because they just got done with the reporting season. I talked to somebody in the industry who runs sustainability for a Fortune 500 company, and they said that she told me that she spends 300 days a year on reporting. And I was like, okay, how can I make this work in like 2 sentences to show people that you don't have to spend 300 days in reporting?
Yeah, for sure. There's a bunch of different directions we could take this, but I'm gonna try to keep us on track, at least remotely here. What are the maybe the flip side of that coin? What are some of the pitfalls that you think are common to those maybe first timers managing small budgets?
Yeah, it's super easy to get like in the weeds on metrics that don't matter. Right. And this is the type of thing that it's kind of a cultural shift that you might have to manage. And if you're a first timer, like that's not something that you probably aren't going to have the power to do that. But as a first timer, like, oh, wow, look at how many signups I got, but that like to a webinar or something like that. And you think, okay, what's the purpose of the webinar? The purpose of the webinar is to inform people about something so they're more likely to buy your product. And if you get 100 signups, but 10 people show up and none of them are in your ICP, and you go out and you report, hey, look, I got 100 signups, and it's like, wow, that's the most signups you ever had. And it's okay, but it's a tiny amount. You've had significantly higher more people come to the webinar, but it's very easy to get stuck in that thing and then start saying, oh, okay, well, how do I optimize so I continue to get 100 signups, but for a better ICP? I was like, well, no. What you should do is try to just get more people in the ICP and not worry about that total number as much, right? So it's very easy to get stuck in that. Same with like the whole MQL, like everybody's trying to kill the MQL, which I'm into that because it makes people think about what they're actually trying to accomplish, right? We look at, what's the cost of obtaining a meeting that turns into a deal that turns into pipeline revenue. And it's so easy to just be like, I drove 100 meetings last month. Okay, how much pipeline did you drive? Not much, right? But that person was told that their KPI is meetings. they're not optimizing towards anything other than meetings, they're optimizing towards deal size or even having deals come from those meetings. So super easy. That's really easy to do, especially if you're really far removed from the revenue team and the where the pipeline's actually happening. So, many times it's not that person's fault, but there is definitely a learning curve that they can, go through to worry about what matters, which again, be the person entering in all the data. You'll start to learn that.
It's interesting you bring that up. I was just chatting with an agency buddy of mine right before we jumped on, and one of the things we were talking about is, it's the leaders in the organization that goes all the way top CEO down to that. One of the core jobs is to make sure that everybody understands how the business works and understands the business model. Because I think that's part of the problem is, yes, your core thing that you're doing might be to get meetings, but you need to understand what happens after the meeting and how you influence it, because otherwise you'll never bother looking because you're like, oh, my job's just to get meetings.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously incentives play into that. There's all sorts of other things, but I think, one of the things I often see, and I'm curious if your thoughts on this, like one of the gaps that often exist in organizations, large and small, is they're just not very business minded. The marketing teams are not, right?
Yep.
They don't understand fully how the business actually operates or what the end business objectives are. And then that causes all sorts of strife, from director level down.
Yep. Yeah, I think I see that a lot. I think I'm lucky in my current role that is not the case. That there's a huge effort from the CEO all the way down to like really everybody on the team. Everybody has an opportunity to speak up at all the meetings and share out their reporting. And we don't share out like weird things like, oh, here's what happened in the last 90 days or whatever. It's here's my reporting sheet for every week, right? Like everybody in the company has access to my reporting sheet. And I have access to everybody else's. Like I have access to the development team's sprint planning. I have access to customer services, phone calls. Like I can list all of them. I can look at everything, and we can all do that whenever we're interested in learning about what each other are doing. And obviously, if you're working in a huge company, that's not really possible. Like, you can't do that at Microsoft. It's not going to work. You get your quarterly all hands or town hall that you can hear things. But in a smaller team, always just try to like report out what's happening. Give people the opportunity to dig into the numbers themselves, which is to say, just give them the data almost raw, and then include some insights that you think are important. Contextualize them. Most people reading this are not going to be marketing people, right? So when I say, oh, we're going to use SEO to drive another 50 organic traffic meetings. Okay, what's SEO? What's organic traffic? And how does it turn into a meeting? Like people forget this to explain that, so you kind of lose the non-marketing people, and then you're not going to get that back from them, right? Like if the dev team doesn't understand what they're doing, they're going to be like, I don't understand what marketing's doing. Marketing doesn't understand what I'm doing. I'm not going to tell them anything because what's the point? Well, if you can remove that barrier, it turns into a conversation. I think that's something that can be invaluable on a small team.
Yeah, I think that the transparency and constant communication, I think, is absolutely critical, especially if your team also happens to be asynchronous too.
Yep, 100%.
Let's talk tools. You mentioned Canva earlier. That's a important one for a lot of folks and small teams especially. What are the tools that someone's got to get? Like, is there something? I'll focus this question a little bit because we can talk about Excel and whatever, but is there sort of like a must-have tool to help you manage small budgets better?
No, I mean, I think not a single tool, but types, right? Like having something like a Notion is great. That's a good way to open up that veil a little bit to everybody. Notion's awesome for that. And that is going to bring in quite a lot of accountability into the budget that you're using.
Talk about that a little bit more, maybe. Sure. I mean, I think most people know what Notion is, but I'm curious. Talk about how does your team use it specifically to do that?
Yeah, we use it to publish all of our reporting, right? It's more of an article. You can both put in you can use Google Docs for this. It's just a much less sophisticated way to do it, but it's just a great way to publish something internally that you want other people to read and be engaged in. I like it because it can be viewed by everybody. Everyone knows how to use it on our team, and it just opens up the whole world. Like basically all of our data, not that all of our processes live on Notion, so anybody can come in and learn about them. So I like that because it kind of opens up that curtain a little bit.
Got it. Any what does the rest of the tool stack look like?
Yeah, so Notion, Canva is great. Anything that can get the job done if you're a little bit more advanced. So I don't know, a lot of advanced people use Canva, but if you want to get into like Adobe Photoshop, things like that, we don't. We're one of the first things I did when I came in is made sure we got rid of a lot of tech. So Miro, we used a little bit. I think we've kind of started underutilizing that. It was just a little bit redundant with Notion. There's only so many ways you can publish things out, but that does help with some of the like thought process stuff, journey mapping. That it's a great tool, especially when you're just trying to get something like built out visually. Gosh, I'm trying to think because there's something like huge. SEMrush is great. SEMrush is a must-have. Yeah, absolute must-have. And you need to learn how to use it. You actually don't buy it and then just try to like figure it out yourself. You actually have to like take the classes and things to learn how to use it. It's a super powerful tool.
All right, so two quick thing on SEMrush. What's something that you think is either underutilized in SEMrush or is just not used or misused?
I mean, it's almost always misused, top to bottom. I notice whenever people would get it and I think it's kind of cool and they use it to do some keyword research and that's like it. But it definitely takes off a lot of the work from like the technical SEO side. And what I like to use, which a lot of people don't understand that they can do this, is when you go in and you say, okay, this is the keyword I want to go for, and they look and they say, oh, okay, cool. The keyword that I look for has 30,000 monthly traffic, and it's like I'm going to optimize towards that. And it's like whoa, like look at the keyword difficulty. If the keyword difficulty is like 99, then you're going to be working on it for a year and you're going to get nowhere. Find something in the middle. Find something incredibly specific. Phrase match doesn't really work that well anymore these days, but the long tail, like phrase match and long tail keywords don't work as much these days as well. But if you can find a pretty decent like specific thing in the middle of that or the bottom half of that keyword difficulty, that's like your bread and butter, and like make every blog post about that for like a couple months and you're going to be in a really good spot. I think that keyword difficulty is A, misunderstood, and B, completely unused.
So then the other, you just mentioned, first thing you did was you got rid of a bunch of tech. I love that. Tell us what you got rid of.
Honestly, I don't even remember. I just like stopped signing contracts. Yeah, I think we had like a couple of different ways to get to pull emails. Like we had I think we actually still have Zoom info, which is fine. I think we got rid of. God, honestly, I don't remember. This was 5 months ago, and I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. So I think it was like
even like types of tools. I'm curious. Like,
yeah, I think we got rid of a couple of productivity tools. We had a lot of stuff that was just like we used a lot of. We already have Notion and Asana, and we had a couple other things that we got rid of. I can't remember what, but it's like, why did we have everything so like all over the place, asynchronous? We got rid of. Honestly, I just don't remember. I just know we have a lot less to worry about than I did when we first did, and it's like I removed it. Like it was an effort that was already being like going from our CMO who got here before me, and I was just like, hell yeah, let's keep doing it.
It's interesting to bring it up. It was I've generally been a big fan of like just being careful of adding on spot solutions. There's somebody, I can't remember who it was. I just saw somebody post something on LinkedIn about there's this change kind of happening especially with tighter budgets and things like that. Like a lot of these spot solutions are going away, and especially in smaller bootstrapped organizations, and they're just saying, okay, you know what, I'll deal with maybe a little bit more discomfort for the effectiveness of just having one thing and less task switching and all that stuff. So
I think a good way to do it, and this is how we analyze almost everything in our company, and I kind of took this mindset from our CMO, Brandon Young, who's amazing. He said, always optimize out the bottom 10% of your job, the least efficient 10% of your job. And that might look like a piece of tech, it might look like a third-party company, but eventually you optimized out like everything almost, right? And then you start over. Okay, the hardest part of my day is the fact that I am using Canva and I'm using this other solution, right? That maybe posts for you. Actually, that's not a good example because I think Canva posts for you. But you might have the worst part of your day might be that you have two pieces of solutions that you need to use to get one task done. Is there a more expensive solution that you really didn't pick because it was just more expensive? You didn't need that robustness that now you can say, all right, let's get rid of these two little pieces and get one bigger one. And that's how you can kind of like get rid of that tech bloat, is to remember that two pieces of tech can be super inconvenient, and there's probably a solution for that. And at some point that might become the lowest 10%, efficiency of your job, and just optimize out those pieces.
Yeah, I love that. I think that mindset, going back to all the way to the beginning, I think is a really important one to have. Whether it's 10% or 5%, whatever you want to call it, I think it's a good way to have a heuristic to make decisions on what you want to do and not do.
Yeah, I think if you combine that part with the conversation of will this help us drive revenue and how, the point, I go back to the video thing because we just did that, right? I was spending so many hours a week on video, and I was like, all right, I need to optimize this out. It's about 10% of my job. Let's bring in a freelancer. Part of the conversation was also, will this increase pipeline revenue? We're running low on content to put not only on organic, but also paid. So yes, it will help our revenue. Great, do it.
So talk about that. This might be a good segue to something we talked about before we started recording, which is you recently turned off paid media completely for, you said, a couple of weeks. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we just kind of got a little excited like the first half of July, and maybe blew it out a little bit too much, and we just had to pull it back for budgetary restrictions. But it taught us a pretty interesting lesson. Well, don't do that. Make sure you're pacing well, which we knew not to do that. We just missed the boat a little bit, because we went from we got rid of our paid media. We saw even like our organic traffic just like took a hit, and we know that, right? Like, but it's just cool to see it. And people who are not marketers and who are not paid media people, demand people, like don't really get that. It's like, okay, our baseline is X, and we have paid media. We have X plus Y, so we'll just go back to X when we turn off paid media. It's like, no, that doesn't work that way. Like there is no baseline, right? Like it goes away. I think that for instance, we got last week we got 2 leads that came in through organic traffic, and they said they saw us on LinkedIn. And that was one of the things where I was like, hey guys, we can't turn off LinkedIn. Look what just happened. We do that doesn't even look like paid media. So good example of just paying attention to your lift. It's very obvious. The graphs were literally 1 week apart from each other. 1 week after we turned off paid media, our meeting volume dropped, and then when we turned it on 1 week later, it came back up. So very obvious. Anecdotally and from the data.
It's one of my favorite, in a variety of ways, just very basic, either throttle testing or just before and after time series analysis. Just purposefully do that, because there's just a lot of things that attribution will miss, right?
Yep.
Whether that be in platform attribution, even if it's view through or whatever, because it's all like that stuff is cookie based. And anyway, we don't need to get in those details, but it's and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning too, of getting creative in how you measure. Like, to me, that's one of those, like, it's not rocket science by any means, don't get me wrong. Like, there are much smarter and better analysts out there than I am, but these basic kind of things that can allow you to, even if it's not an exact number, like does it matter whether it's 40% lift or 25% lift? Probably not.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to your point about measuring it and like getting the attribution out of it too is, we had a lot of paid media going on, and somebody messaged me and said, hey, we'd love to have your CEO on this. It was like this webinar. I can't remember who it was by, but it was literally on Wednesday, and I can't remember it. And she said, I saw an ad of her talking, and I really want her on. Well, we went on that webinar, and within an hour, 3 of those people had messaged her and said, I want to get a meeting with your sales team. What do you attribute that to, right? The webinar, LinkedIn too, though, right? Like those 3 may never have happened. What was really cool is one of those people had actually been through our sales process before, but it didn't work out, and like that triggered their memory, right? So like, okay, now what do you attribute that to? Do you attribute it to the sales process I went through a year ago? Do you attribute it to the LinkedIn ad? Do you attribute it to the webinar? And it's like, okay, so like now you're now overthinking it, right?
And
just
the
make
answer
sure there's
is
a lot
who
of really
cares,
good content
right?
out. Yeah, the answer is who cares? A, because the revenue's there. B, like, just make sure that you're not, doing anything rash. You're not just like massively dropping off anything, and you're probably gonna be in good shape.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Like just having the understanding that things are tied together is all you need.
Yeah. It's a holistic
in
marketing
most
approach.
cases.
Yeah. Holistic marketing. I think if you're not looking at it in that way, then you're missing out on something.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about results then.
Mm-hmm.
You've come in, you've built a team that's maximizing their skill sets and what they're doing. You're managing a smaller budget in an effective way. You've built the funnel. What's it been doing for you?
Pipeline is what I'm looking for. Pipeline's way up. Something that we did that was pretty cool was we actually redefined when we apply dollars within our pipeline, which
What do you mean?
I don't know why it works. So basically we were waiting until a certain period, right? Like way down the line to apply actual dollars, right? So if they got through like the second or third stage, then we apply. But now we apply it like really, really early. What that's done, especially now because you brought up the quality of leads that come, is that we're applying it earlier. We know the resources we need to put in, and we understand where to put in the paid and the organic efforts everywhere else be way sooner. Our buying cycle is, depending upon, especially in the enterprise companies, depending on what time of the year it is, like 9 months. So I wasn't going to be able to get that feedback for 3 or 4 or 5 months to see when they move to stage 2, 3, 4, 5 in the funnel, whatever it might be. Now we put it in really early, and I can say not too early in the point where it's like doesn't really exist, but we're just throwing anything on there, but early enough where I can actually go and say, 2 weeks to 3 weeks later, hey, this specific effort we did has produced pipeline. Let's keep investing in that. You need to find that kind of balance, especially if you're going to make a big change there. But that's been the biggest change, is that we're able to now attribute success a lot quicker, and success and failure a lot quicker, and we've seen huge pipeline growth come from that.
God, it's amazing to me how much the technical side of the sales process, I guess you can call it rev ops, whatever, influences what you can do with marketing.
Yeah.
Because we've got a client who we're working through a measurement strategy piece with them, and we're just finding out that, a good portion of the time, people don't even put in the opportunity until it's close to closing. Like, well, that's a problem.
Huge problem.
Do you have any idea what that does to our understanding of what's happening in pipeline in the first place, and where to invest and how soon to invest?
Yeah, and it's part of my mandate leading demand gen is for me to be an understanding of everything that's happening from the second somebody first hears about us all the way to the point where they potentially become a client. No, I may not be. I'm for sure not responsible for every piece of that, but I need to be hyper aware of every piece of that. Right? This may show an absolutely awful work-life balance. So I do not recommend anybody. I tell nobody this, but like first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I look at HubSpot. Literally 5:30 in the morning, alarm goes off, boom, anything cool come in overnight? Yeah, great. And then I look at it again at noon. I look at it again at the end of the day. I look and see what deals moved, what happened, what's going on, why did they move, how much got added, how much got taken off of deal value, and we really need to understand what it is. So there's a couple of things that I've noticed recently, which is to say that on paid search, it's moving a lot quicker, but it's also a smaller budget. That's fine. That's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a thing, right? And I'm paying attention to that really closely on a day-to-day basis because of how quickly these move. We're getting these guys in a pipeline a week after they sign up for the form fill for the demo, and I'm able to just go around and say, okay, let's go make that adjustment. So yeah, don't do that. Don't look at HubSpot first thing when you wake up in the morning.
No, it's interesting you bring that up though, because at some point, it like you said, it's fine, but at some point, once there's enough volume there, you do want to ask the question of, well, why is that? And then is there something I want to do about that? Yep,
exactly. Yeah,
is it because the people who end up searching are in organizations with tighter budgets, so they're maybe more price shopping and comparison shopping compared to others that just go and get a recommendation. Totally making that up. Again, I've seen that in others, so I'm not totally making it up, I guess. But and if that's the case, okay, is there something you can do about that, or is that just how it is?
Yeah, and I think the next step, and I'm not gonna do this now, but like at any time soon, like 'cause we're a small team. I can't just like have somebody go do this for like 3 or 4 days straight. It would kill our whole momentum. But what I would like to do is understand, like, now, tinkerer, right? Which keywords are getting the higher revenues out of it? And now we're getting to the point where like everybody's in this whole world of like stop paying attention to those upper funnel metrics and stuff. I'm gonna get crucified for saying this, but like just digging in and saying, okay, which keywords are producing the fastest moving leads and the fastest moving, opportunities, and which ones are producing the highest volume, because then I can break that out into different campaigns and I can say, all right, people who are searching for this are super, super price conscious. So let's highlight, either that, if we aren't the lowest priced option, why getting a little bit more, paying a little bit more is gonna be worth it. If we are, then let's highlight that. If a different keyword is much bigger budgets and moving much slower, then we may be talking about a huge enterprise client that are coming in and looking at this. And so we might want to talk a little bit more about implementation and how we might work into their IT or their security processes, things like that. Again, it's like, okay, what's going to have the most effect on revenue right now? That wouldn't, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. But in the future, that's something, right, for us to look at. It's on the shelf. Let's put it that way.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that brings us kind of to a certain extent full circle on the skill set side of things, is going back to that. You need to understand the business model and how it all works and what the different aspects are, because otherwise you can't do these things.
100%. Completely agree.
Awesome. Well, Adam, I know we've been chatting for quite a while here. I want to be cognizant of your time, and we've talked about the mindsets in terms of being a tinker. I think that's a great one. And how to become a tinker if you're not. We've talked about, skill sets in terms of just being really good at Excel, understanding the data, understanding the business. Tool sets are pretty straightforward. We talked about some of that. I love the concept around, constant communication, using Notion for things like that, and just publishing, reporting openly, etc. And then results kind of speak for themselves, right? In terms of increased pipeline and just that lift you were talking about in terms of, hey, look what happens when you turn off paid media. So shared a lot of awesome stuff. Is there anything that maybe I did not ask you that we didn't touch that you're like, hey, if you're managing small budgets, be on the lookout?
Yeah, we could do a whole series, right? But I think for now, this is good.
Okay, sounds good. Maybe we'll have to
called
have a
the baby budget series.
Yeah, there you go. Well, in that case, let's switch to our lightning round.
I didn't look at these questions ahead of time.
That's all right. They're not difficult, I promise. At least they shouldn't be. What is the main KPI you use to evaluate marketing success?
Pipeline and revenue.
What is something new that you're looking forward to testing out this year, especially considering you've got a small budget?
Bigger budgets.
Bigger budgets.
I'm just going to use that. Bigger budgets.
All right, we'll roll with it. What is a marketing best practice that you think should no longer be a best practice?
I'm not sure how to answer this quickly, but basically stratified KPIs, which is to say that like throughout the revenue team, people are getting bonused and on different things, because if I'm getting bonused on meeting volume, you best believe I'm going to get a lot of meetings pushed in. And if the sales team is bonused on revenue, they're probably not going to like me very much because I don't really care, right? So yeah, making sure everybody's pretty aligned on what that all means, and who's given the kudos for what, whether the kudos are in good jobs or on larger paychecks. Yep,
for sure. What is your least favorite business word or phrase?
Anything with 3 letters. Basically, KPI,
so like
cost per go. Yeah, acronyms. That's what I'm looking for. Any acronym.
Got What is your favorite business or marketing book
Oh man, I don't read.
or podcast? We can go that way.
I don't listen to podcasts. Well, I do. I listen to crime. I try to like turn it off when I'm not working. Oh, you know what I read a long time ago that's always resonated with me is Blue Ocean Strategy. I think that's a great book. Highly recommend checking that out, especially early in a market or early in your business career at all. Definitely read that. And if you haven't read it late in your career, read it. It's good. It's a little dense, so make sure you put enough time aside for it.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. What is your favorite song or playlist or artist?
Yeah, I don't know like song or artist, but playlist. I listen to a lot of like chill house. I have a pretty active engine in mine, and I think using chill house brings me down a little bit, a couple notches, which is definitely needed. Otherwise, I'll fly off the face of the planet.
Very nice. What is something that somebody couldn't find out about you through your LinkedIn profile?
I don't know, man. It's a good question. Oh, I'm level one certified in sommelier, so that's kind of fun. I don't really talk about that on LinkedIn. That's not level one's not that impressive, but working towards level two, which is what I would consider to be somewhat impressive.
Very cool. Very cool. How many levels are there? I guess I don't even know.
Three. Well, yeah, like three and a half. There's like an introductory level, then level one, two, and three.
Got it. Got it. So what is we're ending the lightning round. What does level one signify? Like what are the requirements to have level one?
You have to take a test, and actually, level one's just a test, but it's based on wine tasting and identification, and then theory, which is basically like how grapes are boil it down, how grapes are grown, how wine is made, why it tastes the way it does, where it's from, where the smells come from, what different chemicals do to different things. So it's like 100 question test, I think, something like that. I'd have to double check, but the study guide's like that, and then there's like 3 other books like that. So.
And what's level two?
More of that, and then level 3 is actually it's considered the hardest test in the world. Like there's only like 300 master sommeliers in the world. I'm just doing this for fun, so
Yeah.
can't imagine I'll ever get to level 3. If I do, cool. If not, no, I really don't care. I just like drinking wine.
Got it. What's are you? Is there a particular type of wine?
For what?
I don't know. Good question.
It depends, man. I like a lot of wine. There's very little wine I dislike except for bad wine. I think every grape can be good. I don't know, like if you're just like somebody who just really likes, who just wants to like get into wine, I think Tanat is kind of fun. It's cheap, but really, really high quality. Oh, it's cheap depending on where you get it from. But really high quality. Right Bank Merlot or Right Bank Bordeaux, which is Merlot, mostly more. Merlot is decent. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. That's a hard question to ask somebody who gets like, is there one type of wine? No, there's lots.
No, I think you actually answered it. Kind of that's what I was getting at. Is like if you're somebody that's trying that wants to get into wine, where's a good place to start?
Yeah, man. When people ask me that, it's like depends. What do you like to eat? What do you like to drink? What do you like to do? In what situations do you want to drink wine? You know, I don't know. There's so many. I always say there's something that's super obvious, which is like a Tanat or like a California Cab, just something that's like incredibly obvious what it is.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Adam, it's been fun. Hopefully it was enjoyable for you too.
Yeah, it was awesome. This was tons of fun. I love doing this. I'm a huge marketing nerd, so keep doing it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, the shows, let's see, I don't keep the schedule. I want to say this is going to come out in early September. But we'll let you know. There'll be we'll send you all the assets. You can use them as you wish. Yeah, this was fun. Thank you for spending the time on a Friday.
Yeah, for sure. And do you send it to me first before you post it, just so I can make sure I didn't say anything I shouldn't have said?
We generally don't, but if you're concerned by it, we definitely can.
I'm sure I didn't.
I don't remember you did not mention any. I'll write down a note, but I don't remember you saying anything specific.
Nothing that sounds proprietary. Great.
No, I don't believe so.
Good. All
Like
right.
the
Well, cool.
closest
This was
we
a lot
got to
of fun.
proprietary is that our LinkedIn budget is less than 10 grand or something like that.
Yeah, which is not
I don't think is that
Most people's
proprietary.
budgets are less than 10 grand. So
Yeah,
cool. I really had a great time, man. I appreciate you having me on. This is great.
yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, you have a great weekend.
You too, bud. See ya.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Master Marketer Show. We'll be back next week with more B2B marketing success stories. Visit our website, www.proofpoint.marketing, for the full episode library, complete with show notes, guides, templates, and more. Make sure to follow Proofpoint Marketing on LinkedIn and YouTube so you never miss an episode. Listen every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.